Hi, thanks for checking out this tour of Common Core-based language. I have a tour for each grade level of standards-based grammar where I give tips and advice for not only how to teach grammar skills, but also how to incorporate your grammar instruction time into your overall writing program. These tours are on the web pages for each grade level edition. One of the features of this tour is a daily writing program where the students have a routine where learning new skills and reviewing old skills just becomes automatic. In this 30 to 40 minute routine, which I call a Smart Start, the students just go on autopilot where incorporating everything they've ever learned about writing becomes second nature. It's a very efficient way to teach and review hundreds of writing skills in a very short amount of time. In this tips and advice tour, the third part of their Smart Start routine is to practice language skills. I spend about 13 minutes showing how this book, Common Core-based language, can be used in short daily activities that you only need to teach once, and the students learn the routine and get months of practice on many powerful language skills. So this part of the tour gives a very good example on how to use Common Core-based language. So I'm going to play this section of the video for you. Then I'll wrap up this tour with a quick overview of the other features of Common Core-based language. So let's begin this tour with that part of the video where I go over part 3 of the Smart Start. Finally, the last one, they'll do activities for language skills. This is where they work on vocabulary. They might do synonyms, antonyms, root words, prefixes, and suffixes. And there's all kinds of places to draw lessons for this. I know it's self-serving here, but I do have a book, Common Core-based language. It does say 6th grade edition, but it's really appropriate for grades 5 and up, because if you know how Common Core works, it all just builds. And so the 6th grade edition will have everything from grades 3 through 6. It may not have a few grade 7 and 8 ones, but it is very, very heavy on language skills. So if you're going to use Common Core-based language for the language part of your Smart Start, let me show you a few of the routines that you can use. These are routines that you only need to teach once, and the students will know what to do every time you use it. So in these routines, the students will typically spend a few minutes a day for 5 days and practice spelling, parts of speech, alphabetizing, how to read phonetic spelling that's found in dictionaries. They'll practice vocabulary and writing. For a 10-minute exercise, it's a very efficient use of time, and they're getting a lot of skills in a very short amount of time. And again, it frees you up to work with small groups on this skill or other skills you're working on in your classroom. It gives you time to take care of administrative issues in the classroom or other issues that pop up along the way. It just gives you some flexibility, some breathing room, and so many benefits of these routines. So the first language routine here is practicing context clues when reading. The worksheet's called Vocabulary from Literature. And the goal is to train the students when they see a difficult vocabulary word, use the context clues around it to see if you can figure out the definition of the meaning yourself. You can see here in the directions, it says, find strong vocabulary words from your text. When they do see a strong vocabulary word, they'll have this worksheet out. So the students will typically have a few of these worksheets with them in their grammar journals. So when they do see a difficult vocabulary word, they have it there. It's ready to go. They'll write the vocabulary word on the line. And then the next step of the direction says, write the 4 words before the word, the vocabulary word itself, and the 4 words after the word. So you can see where it says sentence from the book, they're going to put the 4 words before the vocabulary word with the vocabulary word and then the 4 words after. So they're just kind of writing down a part of the context that they've seen in the book. Then they'll examine it, not just those 9 words, but they'll examine the whole area. You've trained them to do it. And they'll come up with what they believe is the definition. And they'll write what they think is the definition here where it says definition in context. Then they'll check. How close did they come to getting the definition correct? So they'll look up the word in the dictionary. They'll write the dictionary definition there. The dictionary will usually have some synonyms. So put a synonym there that matches the context of what's happening. Then the students can decide how close did they get. And I let them give themselves a score. So they could put a 4 if they nailed it. They really got exactly what the word meant. They could put a 3 if they got pretty close, but it was pretty good. Then they could give themselves a 2 if they really weren't that close. And they could even give themselves a 1 if they were just purely guessing. That kind of helps them be mindful, and it gives them something to shoot for. They put a lot more effort into trying to guess the definition of the word when you encourage them to do that. So this is a very simple activity. It helps them develop some excellent habits, not only in reading, but acquiring vocabulary. And that'll obviously help them in their speaking and their writing. Also, it's a skill I regularly point out while we're reading in all subject areas. We'll stop and do this very quickly when we see a difficult word, whether it's in history or science or any other difficult text. So next, moving on to the next routine, what I'll do is I might spend a week or 2 on one routine. To mix it up, I'll go to another routine. I'll do that for a couple weeks. Move on to a third routine, and I'll cycle a bunch of these routines in throughout the year because once the students have learned it, they really don't have to teach it again. You just review it and off they go. So this next routine I'm going to show you is one of my favorites. It's called Shades of Meaning. The kids love it and it's highly effective. You can see here up at the top of the worksheet, they're given 5 words that basically mean run. But if you look at the nuance between the words, they're actually quite different. You can see run, dart, race, sprint, and whisk. Obviously, there are times where one word is far more appropriate than the other. So the students may recognize the words. They probably won't recognize all of them. But at the very least, they're going to really examine the nuance between the different words. Now, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to rank them or put them in order from the least extreme version of the word to the most extreme version of the word. And these extreme versions of the word are kind of reflected there in that color chart. If you go get a paint sample, you get shades of the same color, where the least extreme version of the colors on the left and the most extreme version of the colors on the right, they're going to do the same thing with these 5 synonyms. So they might say, well, maybe whisk might be the least extreme version of that word, then maybe dart, then maybe sprint, then run, or they may say race is the most extreme version of that word. And it's okay if they're not exactly right. The whole point is to look at the nuance. And the students can even get into groups and debate which words would go in which order. And that creates more discussion. They're internalizing the words and definitions even more. And that's just good teaching right there, when the students are debating what order to put these words in. So that's one way they'll do it. And you can see at the bottom of the worksheet, instead of 5 synonyms, they're getting 3 synonyms for one word. Then there's an antonym, and they'll get 3 synonyms for that. And again, they'll have to put them in extremes from one word to its antonym, the other. In this case, it's cold and hot. So there's 3 words there that mean cold, 3 words that mean hot. They'll have to put the words in order from coldest to hottest. You can see there the 3 cold words are frosty, frigid, and brisk. And again, they may debate with each other or in their own minds. Well, frigid and frosty? Which one is the most extreme cold? And whatever they decide is fine. They may say, okay, frigid. Okay, that's the coldest. Then they put frosty. Then probably brisk would be third. Then they look at the 3 words for hot. They may debate, well, sizzling, sweltering. Oh, I think sweltering might be the hottest. So they put sweltering last and then sizzling. And then in the middle, humid is the least extreme version of hot. So when they look at it, they'll see something like frigid, frosty, brisk, humid, sizzling, and sweltering. And they can see one extreme to the other. It's an excellent activity. The kids really enjoy doing it, especially if you make it like a challenge out of it. See if you can put them in order that I put them in. Offer them raffle tickets and prizes for it, and they'll really get into it. And then you could have them put their answers on posters and have them pin their answers on the wall, have somebody in the group do a presentation. Well, we chose this because of this. And then challenge the crowd to challenge their answers and see if they can justify a different order, and all kinds of things you can do with this. And this is just one of the activities that they'll do. So in Common Core-based language, they go on to part 2 of this routine, because that was just day 1 and 2. So now they're moving on to day 3 and 4. And what they'll do here is they have these boxes in the workbook. They can do this in their grammar journal as well. And then they'll have it as a reference for a long time. So it says, for each set of words from part 1, make a picture that represents each word. Write each of the words at the top of the box and draw the picture below. So really what they're doing here is you're encouraging them to look at the nuance of the word and put the nuance in the picture. So how is frigid different than frosty? Can we see that in the pictures? And then have them explain their pictures to the group. And by the way, teach them that word nuanced. They'll get a big kick out of that, especially if you tell them, you'll be among the few 6th graders on the planet who know what the word nuanced means and are able to use it in a sentence correctly. So that'll motivate, especially your high-level students. They'll eat that up. So they'll make pictures, and by making these pictures and putting the nuance in the picture, it really starts locking these words in their brain. The side effect of this too is it gets them conscious of using the exact right words when they write. As you're writing with them in class and as they're writing, you could ask them, hey, stop. Look at your writing. Look at your words. Are there any words that you could say, well, maybe there's a better word for that? And get them in the habit of using the exact right vocabulary when they're writing. Finally, they'll move on to the rest of the activities, and this could take them up to 2 weeks to complete this activity. It says, write a short story for each set of words. Use each of the words in your story. You might just spend a week on one, like the hot and cold. Then the next week, they'll do short, tall. Then the next week, do walk, run. But what they'll do is they'll write a short story, and the whole point is to get them using these words in the context of writing, creating situations in their writing where these words would be appropriate. And finally, part 4, create your own shades of meaning. This could be a 2-week journal activity all by itself. So it says, use the set of words below to find 6 words that lead from one extreme to the other. So you can see here, rough and smooth, boring and exciting. So they'd find 3 synonyms for one, 3 synonyms for the other, put them in order, rank them from least extreme to most extreme. There they have their shades of meaning. Then have them go back and do parts 2 and 3 with the words that they created. This would make a great homework assignment. This could keep them busy for 45 minutes to an hour. Give the substitute something to do that they already know how to do. It'll make everybody's day easier, and they're getting really good practice while you're gone. So this shades of meaning is one of my favorite parts of the language part of our Smart Start routine. Common Core-based language has a few other routines that are excellent, more than you can possibly use an entire year, especially if you're making routines out of them. Okay, that was from Standards-Based Grammar Grade 6 Tips and Tricks, where I was showing teachers how to incorporate grammar and writing lessons in a systematic way that allows students to learn new skills and practice old skills, all within the context of actual writing situations. The lessons you just saw focus on the language skills of Common Core-based language. Now I'll finish this tour by showing you more of the grammar punctuation skills from Common Core-based language. First, Unit 1 focuses on non-restrictive elements, which I just call by-the-way comments within a sentence. These are words, phrases, or clauses that are non-essential to a sentence. You can see I also put the word parenthetical in the title along with non-restrictive because you'll hear that word all the time in academic discussions. You might hear a speaker make a by the way comment as a side comment and say, parenthetically, let me tell you, then they'll return back to the main topic. It's a really good vocabulary word to start teaching students, and I'm willing to bet that once you start teaching this worksheet, very soon after that, you'll start hearing the word parenthetically all the time. It's a really good vocabulary word. So, how will your students add non-restrictive or parenthetical elements to a sentence? Well, this worksheet shows 3 basic ways your students can do that. They can use commas, parentheses, or dashes, depending on how severe the interruption or by the way comment is. So here on the worksheet, the students learn to use commas when the parenthetical is just bonus information. They'll use parentheses if the by the way comment is just a mild interruption and the details aren't really super important to the sentence anyway, so they'll use it to set a tone or just to give a key fact like a date. Then they'll use dashes the opposite way if the by the way comment really needs to stand out. Like in the last example here, the party was ready except for one thing, guess. So you can see the dash is used there to make the word guess really stand out. So following this worksheet will be more worksheets where the students get to practice writing non-restrictive elements within the context of actual sentences. They'll use the trick they learned from the first few worksheets to add these parentheticals, and they'll use which or appositives or interrupters, dates, or setting a tone to add these parenthetical elements within different sentences. Okay, looking at units 2 and 3, when it comes to the Common Core standards, these 2 units are unique just to grade 6, but they can be used as a great review if you teach another grade level like 7th or 8th. Coming back to these would still make great practice, especially the worksheets on fixing vague pronouns. So here's a worksheet showing students how easy it is to confuse your reader when they're not clear about how they use their pronouns. You can see here that within Common Core-based language, the students aren't just learning vocabulary and skills. They're expected to be able to explain the logic behind why certain pronouns are used incorrectly and why using the pronouns in a different way is a better way to write the sentence. So here the students are expected to explain why the incorrect sentence is confusing. To help them do this, they're also given sentence frames to help them get comfortable with the terminology. For example, you can see in the first example, Bobby is the antecedent and it's singular, so the pronoun needs to be singular. And you can see the sentence frame there is showing them that they should say, Bobby is the antecedent, so a singular pronoun is needed. And that's what they write on the line that says explain. Now there's another sentence frame there that says, it is unclear whether the antecedent is blank or blank. There'll be times where they just have to completely rewrite the sentence because it's absolutely unclear who the pronoun is referring to. So they have to completely rewrite the sentence. So they'll have sentence frames that will help them explain exactly why they're making the changes that they're making. Okay, this next worksheet here shows intensive and reflexive pronouns. And these actually become really good writing tricks and help become just another tool to help your students write better sentences. Here you see the definition of reflexive pronouns. Reflexive pronouns will reflect back to the noun or pronoun that they mentioned earlier. Words such as myself, himself, herself will reflect back to another word that they've just used. And learning to use intensive pronouns to improve sentence variety is another great skill that will help your students become better writers. The intensive pronoun is a reflexive pronoun that adds intensity to the noun or pronoun that came before it. Like in the example, Mom herself gave the boys a haircut. She wasn't going to pay a fortune to have someone else do it. She did it herself. I didn't have to say all that extra stuff. Just by saying Mom herself gave the boys a haircut, the intensity of the intensive pronoun made that implication for me. I didn't use the intensive pronoun as a writing trick very much before I started teaching this worksheet, but now I use it all the time. So this worksheet shows students how they can use pronouns to add emphasis in a sentence, and it really makes their sentences more powerful and just becomes another tool they could add to their collection of writing skills. It's well worth the time no matter what grade level you're teaching. Finally, all the grade levels of Common Core will require Units 4 and 5. In Unit 4, the students basically learn to master the comma rules to learn multiple ways to write sentences. This allows your students to add variety to their sentences and keep the readers interested. This worksheet here shows Rules 7 and 8, words, phrases in a list, and the comma to avoid confusion. And this worksheet shows a few writing activities where students are expected to use the comma rules within the context of actual writing situations. When you do these journal activities with your students, you'll notice just how good their paragraphs really sound. Even the low-level students, their paragraphs sound really, really good when they're forced to use these comma rules within their paragraph. I suggest that you try reading some of these lower level students' paragraphs to the class and then make a really big deal about how good they sound, because it's a really good ego boost for the students. And it's a real legitimate compliment. You're not just making it up, so the students know it's genuine. I've had times where the other students applaud the paragraphs after I read them, and you can just see the lower level students for the first time in their lives are getting applauded for something great that they've done. So this is a really amazing skill and a great way to teach comma rules and get them to incorporate comma rules into their everyday writing. So next in Unit 5, the older students may have the basics of capitalization rules, but there are several tricky circumstances where knowing if a word should or should not be capitalized isn't quite so clear. So this unit will help with that. Here's a checklist showing all the capitalization rules the students will learn. You give a pretest that's in the book, and the students get this worksheet, and they're able to mark the items as you correct the test together. They're able to mark the items that they missed, and this shows them exactly where their trouble areas are. So when you do the rest of the worksheets from the book, they're hyper-focused on their problem areas, and they have this worksheet as proof, and it really motivates them to focus on their trouble areas, and they end up doing so much better on the post-test. Then here's an example of one of those worksheets that they'll be working on, and ultimately they'll master this skill. I think the only thing that I haven't shown you is that there is a routine for Greek and Latin vocabulary words. It shows students how to study for spelling tests because the students are going to start learning to associate Greek and Latin roots with strong English vocabulary words. And knowing the root words will help tremendously with their spelling as well as their vocabulary. For example, I remember being in high school and I was spelling the word benefit with an I benefit, until I learned that the Latin prefix bene, B-E-N-E, meant good. And from that point on, all these words that I was spelling with an I, because I learned bene meant good, I now know all those words have an E instead of the I. So words like benefactor, beneficial, benediction, benefit, those are several words right there that I went from spelling incorrectly to spelling correctly. So I incorporated a spelling practice routine in with the Greek and Latin routine, because then they'll start making those connections even stronger. This is a really good unit. So that's it for the tour of Common Core based language. You can download some sample worksheets and get purchase information back on the website. Thanks for watching, and go create better writers.
CreateBetterWriters.com